Here's a quick look at what we'll cover today. So we're going to start out with meeting our coach, Becky Wheeler. She's our Senior Customer Success Manager here at Restaurant365. Then we will break down our AP automation tools. We're going to talk about AP Capture Pro, Capture AI, as well as EDI, what they do, how they work, how they can help. After that, we're going to share a few best practices and talk about some customer spotlights. And finally, we'll wrap it up with some opportunities to grow and some fun events coming your way. So do stick around. So yeah, let's now that you know what's ahead, let's meet your coach for today's session. She is one of our resident experts when it comes to AP automation and customer success. So I'm excited to introduce Becky Wheeler, Senior Customer Success Manager here at Restaurant365. She's been with us for almost 4 years. She actually started in accounting implementation, so she has deep knowledge of our platform from setup to optimization. She now partners directly with customers like you to streamline operations and maximize value through smart workflows. Fun fact, Becky grew up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. She's a lifelong skier, but now lives in Honolulu, Hawaii. So she's traded snow for sand, living her very best life. Becky, please take it away.
All right, I think we have a poll that we're going to do first before we get started. So under this poll, we're understanding your current state. So are you manually entering in those invoices, uploading PDFs into Restaurant365, already using AP Capture Pro or EDI, or Capture AI? I'll give you a few minutes, or sorry, a few seconds to get through this.
Yeah, and also let us know, like, how long does it take your team to enter one invoice, right? We know you have many, but on average, you might know. And what's your biggest challenge with AP today? We'll give everybody a few more seconds. I know there's 3 questions, so we want to make sure you have enough time to get your answers in there. Here's your 10-second warning. 3, 2, 1. All right. We're going to share the results with you guys.
Give you a second to look at those.
So a lot of people are uploading PDFs into R365. That's fantastic. Using EDI, that's impressive. Taking you about 1 to 3 minutes to enter that invoice. And we got some big challenges, right? A little bit normalized, but all the above.
All right, let's get started. Okay, so first things first, why automate AP entry? So what does the process look like for manual entry? I'd say probably a lot like the image on the left there with all the stacks of paper, so endless data entry, lots of room for error. Uh, there are a few key challenges that we're going to talk about, right? So it's incredibly time consuming. Teams can spend hours inputting in that data line by line. That's really just not the best use of their time. Using that time drives up labor costs, right? If you have to have a whole team who's just manually entering in that information, it's not ideal. And then that paper-based process leads to a lot of errors, right? So key things get lost, keyed in incorrectly. There's a delay in actually getting the invoices in the system. This all creates inefficiencies that will ripple through the business. Let's look at what the benefits of automation are. So the time savings, automation dramatically reduces the time it takes to process a single invoice. Accuracy, digital systems eliminate most of the manual entry mistakes. I'm not going to say all of them, but certainly most of them. And then fraud prevention, right? Automated systems offer more visibility and control. making it easier to spot anomalies and unauthorized payments before they even happen. Ultimately, automating AP entry isn't just about saving time. It's actually about creating a smarter and more scalable process that protects the business while also supporting its growth. All right, so we're going to look at a few of our tools. We've got 3 that we're going to talk about today. AP Capture Pro, AP Capture AI, and EDI. Starting with AP Capture Pro. So AP Capture Pro is a service, not necessarily a tool. With AP Capture Pro, instead of your team going in and manually entering in those invoices, the R365 data entry team is actually going in there. So how does that work? You get the invoice into the documents to process queue. There's a few different ways you can do that. You can use that designated AP processing email. Your vendors can have that and just send invoices directly to that email, and they'll pop up in documents to process. Your team members, so your employees, can use that email and send the invoices to that email if they've already scanned them into the computer, or they're getting them to their email address and just forwarding them over to that AP processing email, or you can simply just upload them to documents to process. We'll go through an example of what that looks like a little later. Second, so after the invoice is in that documents to process queue, within 24 hours, the R365 team goes in and enters in the invoice details based off of the vendor specific entry instructions or memorized transaction templates. Once the invoice is entered, it just needs to be reviewed and approved. That being said, you do have to review that documents to process queue in case there was any issues identified by the AP Capture team. This service is really ideal for the non-integrated vendors. So any vendor that you have that doesn't have that EDI capability can just send those invoices directly to that documents to process queue. AP Capture team will go in and process them for you. All right. That being said, that feature is sold in packages, so you have to keep track of how many you are processing through the AP Capture team. There's reports that allow you to see how many AP invoices are processed using AP Capture Pro. All right, a little bit about AI. Capture AI works by scanning the emailed invoices and using intelligent automation to actually extract the data. So the key invoice data that it's extracting includes vendor name, invoice number and date, amounts, item level detail, so the unit of measure, the item name and number, and the dollar amount. The step 1 for getting the invoices to Capture AI is similar to OCR, where you have to get the invoice to the documents to process queue. Ooh, sorry about that. Pivot back. So getting them to the documents to process queue, you can use the similar methods that we just talked about in OCR. I do see that we have a hand raised, so I'm gonna, after we finish talking about AI, we'll pause and we'll answer some questions. So step 2, after you get the invoice into the documents to process queue, AI just goes in and does its thing. It's a very quick process. It should happen really within seconds. And then after AI reviews the invoice, you go in, you review the data, see if all the mapping is correct, see if all the information is correct, and then you create the invoice. So it's simply a button click after you review the information in documents to process. Then that puts the invoice in the AP transactions screen, and from there you actually approve it.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unmute Norma.
Yep.
Go ahead and ask your question.
What about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Hi, Becky. I have 2 questions for you. Email queue, is that 1 email per account or 1 email per location in your account?
That's a good question. It's 1 email per account. So the email is like if you have multiple locations, it's still 1 email. We use, the smart technology to identify the ship to location as well as the bill to location on those invoices to determine which location that invoice should go to. So
All
it's
right.
not usually an issue, even though it's just 1 email.
Okay. The next question is 2-part question. The first one, what is considered an invoice? 1 page, 1 document with 3 pages, or each side of a page.
So you can have one invoice that's 10 pages long, and that's considered one invoice.
Okay, so it's by page. All right. And the second part of the question is the fee for manual processing versus OCR recognition the same? Is that still considered one invoice? Or if it's OCR versus manually handled, is a different pricing?
It's different pricing. So AP Capture Pro is one pricing. You purchase those in packages, and then OCR is a by database cost. And I don't know exact prices. We would have to get you in touch with your account executive in order to get actual quotes. But it's different. So it's not like one price for both.
Thank you.
That's all the questions so far?
Yep. Thank you,
Okay.
Norma.
Perfect. All right, so moving on here, just to wrap up AP Capture AI, the real value here is like the speed and scale. So you get fast, consistent invoice entry that reduces that manual work and helps prevent data entry errors. All right, moving on to EDI. EDI is our most hands-off solution available. I would say a lot of our customers have this set up for at least 1 to 3 vendors. And that usually happens during onboarding. So this process allows direct system to system transmission, so directly from the vendor to your AP transaction screen. How it works is you first identify that the vendor can submit the required formatted invoice to the FTP folder. And then after you determine that, we would open a support ticket, and our support staff would work with the vendor to actually troubleshoot and ensure that the invoices are coming in accurately. So you'd submit a support ticket. You want to make sure and have your vendor rep copied on that and your account numbers. And if there's any sort of like distribution center number, you want to have that as well. So there is some information that we need up front. The vendor needs to be in Restaurant365. It needs to be set up correctly. And then from there, after you put in the support ticket, R365 actually works with the vendor to establish the connection. So they're going to perform the testing, troubleshoot those invoices, make sure that they're flowing into the system correctly to the correct locations. And something to note is that this is mostly for itemized invoices, so those big food purveyor distributors. So you want to have those items built out in the system as well. That being said, it does not have to be just for item level detail invoices. So once the connection is active, invoices are sent directly from the vendor into the R365 system. They're already coded and ready for approval, but you do have to go in, review them, and approve them. So you'll see a consistency with all 3 systems is reviewing and approving those invoices. This is really ideal for large, frequently used vendors, especially those national distributors, as I mentioned, who already have EDI capabilities. That being said, just because they aren't on our vendor integration list, which we do have in the knowledge base, those are the vendors that are already vetted and we already have that integration set up with, doesn't mean that we can't do it for a vendor that's not on that list. We've had a lot of success with reaching out to vendors, telling them what the required format of the file that we need is, and getting them set up for customers. So just because they're not on the list doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. We have a discovery email that you can send directly to vendors that lists out exactly what we require. Once we determine that they can create that file and submit it to us, then we get them in touch with support. Mind you, we do need you to work through the beginning phases of that with your CSM and your account executive, because there is a per EDI price. So if you want to set up a vendor, make sure and touch base with your CSM. All right. We have another poll. All right, so this one is to talk about which tools you've heard of before today. So not as of today, but which ones have you heard of before today? Another question, do you know which vendors in your system are EDI capable or enabled? So this one's a 2-question poll.
Now we're getting some good answers in here. We're going to give you about 10 more seconds. All right, 3-second warning. 2 and 1.
Awesome. So there's nobody that hasn't heard of any of these services, which is great. That I'm happy you're familiar with them. EDI, like I said, most of our customers are familiar with that and are actually using it for at least 1 to 3 vendors. And then obviously you know which vendors you are EDI enabled. I think so, but not sure how to check. Your CSM can absolutely help you with that, or if I have time, I'll definitely show you how. All right, moving on. We're gonna look at a real world customer. This is my customer, Luna Grill. They had a lot of success with actually reaching out to vendors and getting them set up on EDI. These vendors were not already existing on our vendor list. So the work up front, like I said, is sending out that discovery email, working with the vendor to ensure that they can produce the file that is required, and that they can drop that file into the FTP folder. Once that is dropped into the FTP folder, like I said, it shows up right in your database. So Luna Grill reached out to a plethora of their vendors and determined which ones were able to do it. They paid for the integration for each one of those vendors, and now those invoices are just flowing directly into the system. This allowed their team members that were responsible for those invoice entries to really focus on COGS, reporting errors that they were not able to focus on before, that were kind of just on the back burner, and if they were able to get to it, they would. That's now their main job, is to identify those issues in the ABT reporting, or issues that were being reported from inventory. So it allowed them to take a more strategic approach to their actual COGS versus just simply trying to get invoices into the system. All right, so we do have some best practices that are going to maximize the capabilities of our AP automation products. So we're going to talk a little bit about those. So best practice number 1 is centralizing your vendor invoice submission. That is using that AP processing email that we were mentioning above before. So by encouraging your vendors to email invoices directly to you, this keeps everything digital, right? So we're not relying on scanning in that paper invoice or getting the paper invoice directly from the vendor, or if you're responsible for getting that from the person that actually does the receiving. We just want to make sure that digitizing as much of it as you can allows consistency across all AP entry. So if all of your invoices are coming in through that AP processing email, then we know that that's what's expected. Cleaning up your vendor record. So ensuring each vendor not only has a default GL account, if there is one, that if that vendor is only associated with certain locations, that location tab is filled out for that vendor. It basically omits it from those locations that are not using that vendor. And then entry instructions, if there are any. So AP Capture Pro especially relies on those entry instructions. So if there's specific things about the invoices for a specific vendor, you can put it in those entry instructions, and AP Capture Pro goes in and reviews those. Another thing is, if you don't want AP Capture processing invoices for a vendor at all, you would put it in those entry instructions. They would see that and they would not process that invoice. Another best practice is standardizing the workflow. So defining clear roles. Who reviews the invoices? Who's responsible for reviewing the documents to process queue for issues? Who's responsible for owning AP Capture AI invoices? Who approves them? Who actually reviews them after they're posted? Who reviews the reports associated with AP? Making sure that there's somebody for each step of the process, or multiple people, and making sure that they know their role. I'm going to pause. It looks like we have another raised hand.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the questions that are here. We've got Jason, who has submitted a couple questions about Capture AI. He says, one issue we're seeing is that invoices from prior periods will not be created unless we change the invoice date to a current period. So he's made the suggestion to add the GL to the OCR mapping review screen or create a setting to allow for invoices to be created on the date of entry instead of by invoice date. So is there another way to get around that issue for accrual basis accounting?
That is a really good question. The first thing that came to my mind, I can't say it's the best option, but so if I'm understanding correctly, OCR will go in and they'll do everything about the invoice, but they won't actually allow you to create it because it's outside of an open period. Is that accurate? Like they process the invoice, but they don't allow you to create the invoice?
Correct.
Gotcha. I don't know. I think that is functioning. I think they intentionally created it to function that way, to be honest. So I think that would be something that we would have to run through the idea portal just to expand its functionality. But we work directly with the product managers and we can pass along that feedback if you haven't already.
Okay, and he has a two-part question as well. So he said he read from the support center and OCR mapping reviews are global. If a client uses the same vendors as we do, what happens if they use line items, but we use just the total amount? How does Capture AI keep these separated or prevent someone else's mapping to conflict with ours?
That's a good question. So it's global to a certain extent, but it's still based off of your mapping. So just because somebody does something specific in their database doesn't mean it's going to pull over to you. There's only certain things that are global about it. And I think that that's like it's collecting data based off of the vendor name. But a lot of our customers even name their vendors that are the same differently. So you can be at ease that just because somebody's doing something one way, it's not going to affect your database and the way that you're transcribing those invoices. That global is really specific to just collecting data.
Perfect. And then we have Norma. I'm going to unmute you, Norma.
Hi. I have a few questions. So
Okay.
regarding workflow, is the workflow per account or per location?
That is actually going to be up to you and how you run your business, right? So if you have, and we're talking about workflow, like what we're talking about here, who reviews the invoices, who approves them, and who gets them posted. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, so that really depends on you. Do you have a certain person that's responsible for entering in the invoices for one location and a different person for the other location?
Correct.
So you determine where you want their workflow to end. A lot of people have security measures around different people entering in the invoices versus paying the invoices. So it really would depend on your organization and what you're comfortable with. So we don't necessarily have specific recommendations. It's really what works best for you.
So just to make sure I understand then, I think I heard you saying the approval workflow is based on security permissions in 365. You don't have an additional workflow to approve invoices only.
You mean somebody that can only approve invoices and not enter
Right,
them? You
right.
can, so within the permissions,
Okay.
there's, I'm trying to picture right now what exactly they are. It's hard with not having them directly in front of me, but I believe there's a box that you can check for invoice entry, and there's a box you can check for AP invoice approval.
Okay. So with that said, besides permissions, there is no an additional workflow to get invoices approved.
There's
Everything is
actually,
managed through permissions.
sorry, yeah, there is actually a feature called workflows, but we're not diving too deep into today, but there's a feature that we can turn on that allows you to set workflows. So if like an invoice is over a certain amount, it has to go through so and so in order for approval. If an invoice is entered at all for a certain vendor, it has to go through so and so for approval. So there is a feature called workflows that adds additional layers to standardize your workflows.
Okay. One more question then. Just going back to the previous question. I understand if we close the period, right, we cannot make any more changes unless we open the period again.
Mhm.
Right, so I just want to ask the question slightly different. So for as long as a period is not closed, the AP team will go ahead on your side, will go ahead and continue creating invoices for that period, correct?
Correct.
Awesome, thank you.
And to just kind of add on to that, so AP Capture Pro, they're going to create the invoices whether they're in a period or not. They're not going to approve them. And if the period is closed, it's not approve them. AP Capture OCR is not allowing the invoice to be created if it's outside of a closed period. So
Okay.
two different situations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Did we have any other ones?
Nope. Let's
Okay.
move on.
All right. We've got some more best practices we're going to roll through. So knowing your automation setup. So which vendors are on EDI, which are using Capture Pro versus Capture AI. You can use both in tandem. And then which ones are you still relying on that manual entry for? Somebody had previously in one of the polls said that they weren't sure how to see which vendors are set up on EDI. From that AP transaction screen, there's a column that's called created by. That column will tell you if it's an R365 import. So you can see if a vendor that you're questioning, how does this even get into the system? If it says R365 import, then it's coming through EDI. If it says R365 data entry, that is AP Capture Pro. All right. And then reviewing and reconciling regularly. So what we mean by that is checking your invoice queues daily. So that documents to process queue, if there's issues on invoices that are identified by AP Capture Pro, they're going to be listed there, whether it's a duplicate vendor or a duplicate invoice even, they're going to list that issue there and you have to address it there. So either get the vendor created or delete out the duplicate invoice. Whatever the situation is, you'll address it there. Reconciling your invoices that have come in against purchase orders or even vendor statements. So making sure that all the invoices are in fact in the system. Training your team. So ensuring your team understands each tool, and if there are thresholds that you've identified in your workflows, that they understand those thresholds as well. There's resources that are available to you. The R365 Help Center has support articles on all of these different products. And then your customer success managers, your CSM, can do deeper dives with you on any of these products. All right, so I'm going to do a quick demo of OCR. Let me just grab my screen here. Sorry, hold on. Gotta move some stuff around. All right. So we should be seeing our test database here. We've got the new navigation on, so hopefully you guys are familiar with that. So where to find documents to process in here? We are looking under accounting, accounts payable, documents to process. So we talked about a few different ways to get information into documents to process. Oops, let me relog on there. Back in there, documents to process. We talked about the couple different ways to get information into documents to process. You can upload the information directly from here, If you're using that AP processing email, the invoices are showing up directly in here. So we've got AP Capture OCR turned on. So you can see, if you're not familiar with this, we've got this status here. That's where it's saying verification needed. So if we go in and we review, we're going to look at the issues that it's identified. So first of all, it's saying this vendor doesn't exist in Restaurant 365. So we would need to go in and create that vendor and reprocess the invoice. And then we've got some issues down here. It looks like the calculated total quantity and unit price are not matching the total. So from here, you want to go in and review the OCR mapping. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you so you can see. We've got these lines around certain points in the invoice, and those are mapped over here. So seller name, also known as the vendor, is here. Invoice number, it's grabbing it from there. Invoice date, grabbing it from here. So if any of this information isn't correct, you have the ability to click and drag that somewhere else. So if it's just initially grabbed the information incorrectly the first time around, you can adjust that and then submit the suggestions. So just, this is a pretty simple invoice. The only thing I would say it's not grabbing is payment terms. So you could always create something along the lines to get that dealt with. But you want to make sure that net 7 is a payment term that you've got set up in the system. So after you've made any changes or fixed anything in here, you'd go and submit suggestions. That's going to back you back out to the documents to process screen. Let it reprocess. Go in and review. And then if everything looks good, then you have the ability to actually create the invoice here. After it's created, it shows up in your AP transactions screen. It would show up here. So talking a little bit about the AP processing email. So where do we find that? That is going to be under admin, system preferences, AP processing email. This is the email, this is the email that is specific to this database. So as long as the email address that it's coming from is listed down here, we call it whitelisting, the invoice can show up in the documents to process queue. You can see that you can do asterisk at and then the business's name in order for all email addresses that exist under that domain to be able to send invoices through. Okay. All right, I will pause. Any questions?
We don't have any currently, but if you have one, either raise your hand or put it into our Q&A.
Perfect. All right, so let's talk quickly about helpful links that are available. I know I briefly mentioned in the knowledge base, aka the support center, there are support articles that are helpful around all 3 of these different features. So AP Capture AI, AP Capture Pro, and EDI. AP Capture AI is a bit of a beast. There's multiple support articles around that. And something to consider with AI is that it is something that you teach initially, right? So as you start using it, it might not be as smart as it is, 3 weeks after using it. So every time you change something or update something in those mappings, you're teaching it how to handle something the next time around. EDI is, we have that vendor integration list that I said, that's the vendors that we already have set up on EDI. Just because they're not on that list doesn't mean that we can't get them set up. So I just want to make that super clear. And then reaching out to your customer success manager as well. So knowing that they're available to you. If you are interested in any of these features or adding them on, you can reach out to your CSM. They'll get you in touch with your account executive to get a quote on pricing. And then if you have if you already have these features and you have specific questions about them, you can also reach out to your customer success manager if we don't cover your question on this webinar. And speaking of questions,
We don't have any. Oh, Jason, here we go. I'm going to unmute you.
Hi. So another one of the issues we're having on the Capture AI is that it's picking up inactive locations as the suggested location. How can we prevent that from happening?
okay. So follow-up question, you said they're inactive. You have them listed as inactive in the location record?
Yes.
Okay. And the period is closed for those locations, obviously, right?
Right. Yeah. So some of the locations that's picking up have been inactive for 3 years.
3 years. Okay. That's a new issue that I haven't heard of, to be honest. So my first question is this something that you've already kind of walked through with support and they've just said, just update as needed the invoice, select the right location?
I believe we have
Okay.
my supervisor, I think, had talked to support about it. So
Okay.
we're just trying to make it as efficient as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see how that would just cause you to have to manually do that every time, right?
Yep.
So I'm wondering why it's even suggesting that location. Is the invoice itself, does it have any indicator that it could be this old closed location?
No, not at all.
Okay, interesting. I would have to take that back to the product. That's certainly just like a functionality flaw. It shouldn't be happening because it should be reviewing the invoice and only suggesting based off of that address on that invoice and the name of the company, the ship to name, etc. Right?
Right. Yep.
Is it something that you're experiencing with one specific vendor?
No, it's across the board with all of our
Okay.
vendors.
Okay, so my recommendation is to, if you hadn't put in a support ticket, make sure and put in that support ticket. But I'll take that information to our product team as well and just see if that's like a global issue we're seeing or if that's specific. And if you have put in a support ticket, the product manager should be pretty aware of that issue that you're seeing. So,
Okay.
sorry I don't have a better answer for you right now.
No, that's fine. I just wasn't sure if there was something else that we could do. Yeah, we do have a ticket in, so
Okay.
I just got that confirmed.
Okay.
I do have another question.
Yeah.
So like we started seeing we had the automate OCR processing setting turned on, and it's the OCR started creating the automatic invoices into 365, which that's great. That's what we wanted to do
Mhm.
but it was bypassing like the review process to where we could change the location. So it was putting invoices in to be paid that were still the wrong location.
Okay.
So trying to figure out how we can prevent that from happening as well.
So it's not even allowing you to teach it to like make the
Well,
correction in the verification process in order to, it's just bypassing that altogether.
yeah, it was bypassing, but I know it was a vendor that we had that I had done the mapping on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, within that mapping screen, I've been checking the boxes for the location, the address, and all that stuff. So it's all matched up. But yeah, it was just picking up the last location that the invoice was entered that that was done. So, like we had an invoice for I'll just location of South Wichita.
Mm-hmm.
And then the very next invoice was for a different location, but it still picked up as the South Wichita location.
Mm. Mm. So it's just taking the last location that an invoice was in and just basically applying the next invoice that comes into that location without.
Without a review process or anything like that to make sure
Okay.
that the location is correct.
Gotcha. Without you being able to go in and teach it, right? If it's just creating the invoice without the verification process where you're like able to pull the little box to the correct location or assign it to the correct location, am not I don't have a exact solution. This is definitely something that we want these little, problems to go through support so that if there is something that they can adjust on their end, that they can, but it sounds like you're already working those angles.
Yeah. So I was just trying to get ideas of how, if there was other ways to
It
keep
doesn't
that.
sound like it's anything you're doing, Jason. So that's one thing I would say is that teaching that, because we're working with AI and we're trying to teach it to be
Right.
better. There could be something, that the product team actually has to adjust. It doesn't sound like there's anything you're doing wrong. It's just
Okay.
it's the robot, right?
Right. Well, my concern too was that if it's going to do that with those locations, is, do we have to, is there a way to go back in and remap that particular vendor to make sure that it's pulling from the same spot on each individual invoice and matching it to that that street address location of the ship to the correct store?
Right, to actually review the mapping that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that we would want to work through as support. So if it's something's not working for a specific vendor, they have the ability to go in and, kind of work it from the back end.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for your for the what you could provide for information on those.
Yeah, no problem. I know that having to go through support isn't always the best answer, but they really are on top of it and they're trying to perfect that feature for you guys. So the more tickets that go in through them, we can identify global issues that are happening. Or, if it is specific to your database, we can review your processes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, it looks like those are all the questions that we have today. So let us move forward. Yeah, and we're just going to wrap things up. We've got your questions answered. We're so glad that you guys were so engaged. Questions were great and challenging. We love that. So we also want to learn from you as well. Before we get to this, I've got a quick little poll. Let's see here. One last question. For those of you who might not be using things like EDI or AP Capture or Capture AI, if you want to dig in deeper after this webinar, we are happy to connect with you, especially connect you with one of our experts to learn more. So I'll give you a couple of seconds just to answer that. But we are going to be moving into our Customer Excellence Award. You can see that on the screen behind your survey. And I am so excited to share what this is all about. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds with the poll. And then we've got 3, 2, 1. Thank you guys so much for responding to our poll. We will be connecting with you if you said you wanted to learn more. And if you are not ready right now, that is cool too. So nominations are still open for this amazing award. This is the first time that we are offering a Customer Excellence Award. So if you are experiencing success with our solutions, maybe our AP automation solutions, right? So whether it's through time savings, smarter workflows, financial wins, we don't care because we just want to celebrate you and we want to celebrate with you. So the contest closes soon, July 15th at midnight. So you've got till 11:59 to get your nominations in for your team. And it only takes a few minutes. The winner receives a $10,000 cash prize and also is spotlighted on the main stage of our biggest event of the year. Drum roll. It's our Restaurant Transformation Festival. This time it is happening September 21st to 23rd in San Diego. This is our big customer extravaganza, our flagship customer experience where innovation, community, transformation, they come together. And we're going to be announcing that winner. We're going to be bringing our category winners there and announcing the overall winner live from the main stage on the last day, all the hoopla, and then celebrating afterwards. So if you haven't registered yet for this event, it is time. Early bird pricing, we actually extended it. It's still available through July 30th. So you are the first to know that. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope you walk away with actionable tips, a clearer path towards smarter, faster AP processes. And if you're ready to take the next step, we are ready to help. So thank you for filling out the poll. We will connect with you if you have any questions about improving the solution further. Always connect with your CSM. And do not leave without checking out the resources. We did provide you a quick link to find out whether or not your vendor is already EDI integrated. And as well, we've got that ideas portal. So if you have any ideas of how we can improve those AP automation tools or anything else about Restaurant 365, we are always working to improve, to make it a better experience, to make it more impactful for your business. So until next time, Becky, do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, take care and keep growing and transforming.